here? That's right.
Stick it.
Hello. My name's SilentMark's. Can I just ask before we start, is anyone offended by swearing? Good, that's alright. This is the first time I've actually performed anything of my own in front of an audience, so good luck to the both of us. So, that's good. He'd never said those words to anyone before, and the novelty of it amused him slightly, but he didn't laugh because he didn't want to spoil the mood. You see, there were only 3 words, and by themselves not really that important, but together, in this sentence, looking into her eyes, they meant 1,000 times more. He'd always liked Jennifer. Since the first day he met her at school, he'd always had that crush. Nothing ever happened though, they were destined never to be together. But like most school relationships, only because they were in different groups. Because of this, she never looked at him twice. That's not to say that Stephen wasn't attractive, far from it in fact. As a matter of fact, if fate had led him down the right path, he could have been a model. And maybe in an alternative dimension, he was. Steve's problem was though, he believed in that alternative dimension. Steve, like quite a few 15-year-old boys, was a fan of the alternative side of life, not so much a scene, more of a series of events that would most likely lead him to lose his virginity at the age of 25. Luckily though, this didn't happen for Steve. He didn't have the acne problems that most 15-year-old boys did, so once or twice the right girl did ask him out, without knowing his fondness to dress as an elf and twat his friends with a sword made out of polystyrene. Jennifer was not one of these girls though. Jennifer was different. Jennifer liked to be called Jenny, with an I, with a heart above the I. In fact, every single lowercase I she wrote was decorated with a heart, much to the hilarity of teachers, exam markers, and anyone who ever asked to fill out an application form. Saying that though, there was tell that one week she started to decorate it with a smiley face instead, until someone told her one of them had a cleft lip. Apparently she got confused and started with the heart again. You see, they were totally different people. Jenny liked to go out and drink with her friends, whereas Steve was content to stay at home and watch repeats of Red Dwarf. Jenny liked to go out with 6-foot-tall football players with world pink t-shirts, and Steve went out with his best friend's sister for 2 months because she broke up with her boyfriend. Jenny listened to dance music blasting out of her phone while walking down the street, giggling with her friends and calling people knobheads. Steve listened to music on his iPod, walking down the street, looking at the pavement, wallowing in self-pity, and with the pouring rain falling on him, yet occasionally letting out a laugh because he realised the song he was listening to was about oral sex. After school, they managed to get into the same university, and nothing really changed. Jennifer grew up, she changed her personality slightly. She stopped blasting out dance music over her phone and started blasting out R&B music out of the windows of her car, with the thoughts that blasting out Pussycat Dolls would be ironic and sexy, and yet strangely deep. She didn't have the best confidence, you see. Now don't get me wrong, she was beautiful, but she was turned down by a modelling agency when she was 17, and since then tried to make her feel the best way she could, any way possible, not always with the best outcomes. After this, she decided that her talent should be shown from behind the camera, and started photography, which she started studying at university, along with psychology, presumably because she wanted to photograph people who were a bit mental. Steve, on the other hand, hadn't changed. He still dressed the same, acted the same, spoke the same, and still loved to end every day falling asleep to a comedy DVD, and still loved to walk down the street on a cold, wet day, music bouncing around in his head, staying in his own world where things were safe and things were good. He'd always been creative, and always loved to do things with his friends, especially films. In fact, one day they all decided to get together and film a Harry Potter / Lord of the Rings makeover, realising on its completion that how gay they truly looked. He studied media production at uni as well as psychology, presumably because he wanted to film people who were a bit mental. On entry to his first psychology lecture though, he realised another thing hadn't changed. Steve still had his crush on Jennifer, and Jenny still didn't even know that Steve existed. He'd always been imaginative, and he always imagined what would happen if they did actually get together. He imagined what he'd do, what he'd say, what he'd feel, and everything like that. He didn't imagine too much though, because he realised there was a fine line between fantasy and stalking. It was lucky they met in the student reunion bar at all, really. Steve was there because he was meeting his friends who ended up being late, and Jennifer was there because her friends told her the wrong place to meet for Sandra's hen party. So Jenny was stood there at the bar, red-faced, wearing a French maid's outfit with "We'll polish knobs for money" written on her back. Now Steve was a kind bloke, and seeing someone dressed as a whore crying into vodka and Red Bull, he thought the best thing to do was to go out and help her, and be the only person in the bar who wasn't actually going to try and slip her a hypno. And then he saw her face. It was her. The girl he had a crush on for the last 5 years, and now she was there in front of him, and he was going to save her. And it worked. For the next 6 hours they talked about school, life, love, people they knew, people they didn't know, and everything in between. Before they knew it, the bar was empty, and they were being pushed out. The decision was made to go back to Steve's. The night went by quickly. Much drink was drunk, many laughs were had, and then a kiss was stolen by Jennifer. This was amazing. Something Steve had been waiting for a long time had actually been happening, and with a person dressed as a French maid, everything was going right. They made love, laid back, and looked into each other's eyes. Everything Steve dreamt of was coming true, and there was only one thing to do now. Say those 3 words. The 3 words he'd never said to anyone else, but had always wanted to say to her. Jenny looked at the man laying back before her, and said, "Tonight was perfect. Thank you." Steve smiled into her eyes and said those 3 words. "Now go home."